In the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
At what point does somebody's life become significant enough to be memorable?
We cannot succeed if half of us are being held back. So this isn't a black issue, this isn't a white issue, it's an all of us issue.
Because there was no witnesses. You know, it was just his word over a dead kids and like.
Come on. Since the 18th century, right, blackness in this society has been equated with evil, baseness, wretchedness, and misfortune. Did you hear me? Since the 18th century, blackness, the whole concept of what blackness means has been equated with evil, baseness, wretchedness, and misfortune.
It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come.
So during the age of exploration, Europeans were celebrated in our textbooks as being the first to travel to the Americas. However, Africans were, they weren't, I wouldn't say that they were the first because I'm not sure about that, but they did indeed travel to the Americas before the Europeans did, and they didn't conquer these peoples. They didn't enslave them. All they did was they shared information. They exchanged knowledge, and then the Africans went back to their homeland and, you know, they applied what they learned to their culture. And I just think that cases like George Zimmerman just goes to show that Europeans historically just have this need to dominate.
And even if you have like the perfect education, it's not only your education, but the education of the people around you and the people you surround yourself with and the neighborhoods you're in, and even with the police. Like, I know in New York there's the whole thing going on about stop and frisk now, and the mayor feels like it's not a racial thing, it's just he's trying to protect his people. But
what prevents you from trying to enter your own house if you're a Harvard educated or a Harvard professor and you're arrested on your doorstep? This happened to a Harvard professor, Henry Louis Gates Jr. I don't know how many of you know about the story. It happened like, what, 2 years ago. So, you know, you can have your ducks in a row, but what's to prevent, you know, the outside world from not stereotyping?
His life, you know, Trayvon Martin's life wasn't, you know, a dog's life was worth more than Trayvon. I mean, this other football player shot himself. He got 2 years, and it was just that constant, like, battle of what's worth a human's life, but not only a human, the black man's life.
Like, my dad will always remind me, like, you know, like being like African American and growing up in America, like, you always have to work harder than everybody else. And like growing up with like so many different people and like in a diverse setting, like it's always like everybody's equal. And then like when that happened, it kind of just like reminded me, like, you know, like there are differences.
What made Trayvon Martin's life so important to everybody else's, instead of people like Odin Lloyd, who was killed by Aaron Hernandez? Nobody knows who he is, nobody knows his story, or what, even the background that came from that altercation. And it just brings to mind, like, what is the difference between Odin Lloyd and Trayvon Martin? And is one person more important than the rest?
And given the development of even democratic processes in this country as defined as against whites protecting themselves from blacks, whether it's whites up north once, you know, at the end of slavery, or within the South where it's much more explicit, then the stand your ground laws do leave this, you know, very broad scope for perceiving danger, which is kind of historically defined as black in this country, but the self-defense.
You know, and so for me, stand my ground is you know, is sort of a cloaked version of earlier laws designed basically to give white people a certain measure of authority over non-white bodies, right? To make sure that those bodies are doing what they are supposed to do within spaces, especially spaces which are occupied or inhabited by white people.